What's up YouTube? Capital G here. We have a new pot card to talk about. Pot of Avidity coming out of Invasion of Venom. And man, I'm not gonna lie, as soon as I saw this card, I got extremely scared. I was fearful. I was like, oh my goodness. Please don't be another broken pot, because we're coming off of Pot of Cupidity, and when that card first came out, even myself, I was just like, man, I don't know. That's 10 cards, but it is a +1. Like, a lot of us were like, hey, it could have some uses. Nobody saw Pot of Cupidity being as broken as it is. And if you've never played Pot of Cupidity, that card's fucking so dumb. I mean, who cares about a quarter of your deck when you basically you get enough advantage generally to just win. And it takes combo decks like DDDs. It makes it so basically they never brick if you open with Pot of Cupidity. But luckily, this card isn't necessarily as broken as things like Card of Demise or Pot of Cupidity, but it's because of cards like that that I don't think that we should sleep on any more of the draw cards. Like, it's been proven people are willing to jump through extreme hoops if it means drawing cards. This one is pretty simple, just like Pot of Cupidity. Pot of Avidity is pretty damn simple. Now, what's interesting about Pot of Avidity is it's a quick play card. And I was like, what the f? Like, we're making quick play pots now? I mean, we've got a lot of pots, and, most of them are banned, like Greed and Avarice, but, we still have things like Cupidity coming up, but we've never had a quick play draw. Like, that's pretty damn interesting. It says you can only activate one Pot of Avidity per turn. Just to put it out there, I think that they're going to build that into every single pot moving forward. Like, obviously we're now going back-to-back sets with pot cards. I don't see them making any more pots where you can use them like twice in one turn. I just don't think that they're going to do it anymore, especially after like what Cupidity is doing to the OCG meta. It says target 3 banished monsters, shuffle all 3 targets into the deck, then draw 1 card. Now, some people might look at this and they'd be like, oh, Cap, it's just a 1-for-1. What I think you have to do with Pot of Avidity, because I thought about this for a few minutes before doing this video. I'm like, I think this card's really good. Like, you have to think of this card not necessarily as a pot card that you're going to try and splash into every deck. What I think that you need to do is you need to look at this as kind of like a refresher for your deck. You need to look at this as a substitute for a card like Burial from a Different Dimension. And you have to understand that, like, some of these decks are products of the environment. Like, if you look at a deck like Infernoids, you just have to accept at this point that I guess Burial from a Different Dimension is never going to go back to 3. I don't know why, but for some reason, Burial from a Different Dimension has been at 1 forever. And if your deck banishes a lot of your monsters, you probably don't have a lot of ways of getting them back. Like, I really thought about it. I was like, how many ways do we have of getting banished cards back into either the graveyard or back into the main deck? And I'm talking about doing multiple cards at once. I mean, Burial from a Different Dimension is generally the first thing that pops in my mind. But even if we're trying to do it one at a time, how many good ways do we have? Things like Dimension Fusion and Return are probably never coming back. So that kind of leaves us with cards like DDR and, Cyframe Omega, but he only does 1 at a time, and DDR is the same way, although DDR is a little quicker. But either, those two can be kind of slow, you know what I mean? So I look at this card and I'm like, yeah, it's only a 1-for-1. It being a quick play is pretty damn, and like, I think it's pretty relevant because you can just set it. And if you don't want to use it that turn, and then if your opponent like tries to Twin Twister it, or they try and like Dragon Pit it or something like that, you can just chain it and get your card. Like, if it's not completely advantageous for you to use it right then and there, maybe you can try and bait out some spell and trap destruction. But I look at this as like a really good alternative to something like Burial from a Different Dimension. I'm not saying that you should run this over Burial from a Different Dimension. I'm saying that you should probably use both of them. If you look at a deck like Infernoids, would I just want to put 3 back into my deck to draw a card? Yeah, I would, because it's another way of me getting my Infernoids back and potentially being able to use them again. Who's to say that I don't draw something powerful like Monster Gate or Reasoning? Because you got to keep in mind, you're doing this for free. You know what I mean? Pot of Avidity will instantly pay for itself. So this is basically a free way to get another card from your deck and get some Infernoid power back into your deck at the same time, so that your cards, like, other cards that happen to mill, like Lumina or Raiden or whatever the hell else you're playing, and your deck can, still actually mill some meaningful shit. I even thought about my Gem Knights. Gem Knights actually can use this too, because in Gem Knights, you do a lot of banishing, but there's, outside of DDR, there's really no way of getting those banished cards back. Gem Knights Fusion banishes, Crystal Rose, if you're running that banishes. Master Diamond also banishes, and there's just no way of getting those cards back outside of, pretty much DDR, which a lot of Gem Knights don't even run. So this is a card that can just put stuff back in. Like, would I want to put all 3 of my Lazulis back in my deck? Hell yeah. That's pretty damn important, because that's just like a Lazuli in your deck is a very powerful play, especially if you combine it with Brilliant Fusion. So again, you always have to think of this card in the context of you're putting stuff back into your deck so that you can do more power plays, but you're doing it for free because this card will pay for itself. Like, I don't think that Pot of Avidity should be compared to other pots. Like, this card is not going to probably stack up against, like Pot of Avarice or Pot of Cupidity, because it only gives you 1 draw. And I think obviously that was probably, like, I think that may have been a response to Pot of Cupidity. And don't get me wrong, if this card would have let you draw on 2, I'd have been like, this shit is broken as fuck, and it would have been pretty obvious. But I think that you need to compare this card, guys, more directly to Burial from a Different Dimension. If you can run Burial in a deck, you can pretty much run Avidity, because it doesn't do quite the same thing, but it kind of does something similar, and it does it for free. There is no neg 1 here. This card is just a simple 1-for-1. Even a deck like DDD's, because Swamp King banishes, also Red Slime banishes. Sometimes that deck will run sometimes they'll try and go into Cyframe Omega so that they can keep putting their Red Slime back in their graveyard, so they can keep fusing from the graveyard kind of like for free. So I think wherever you can run Burial, you can run this. And honestly, in some situations, this is even more advantageous than Burial. So, I mean, I think this card is good, but again, it's more of a comparison to Burial than other pot cards. But again, it being a quick play, pretty good, and I think this card is solid. I'm not going to be dumb enough to be like, it's bad. Like, nah, man. I think we're past the point as a community where we're going to get burned by these pot cards and come out here and say that they're bad and they won't be played, and then they come out and they end up being fucking staples and like the OCG and probably soon the TCG. So let me know what you guys think. The artwork on the card is I guess a little ugly, but honestly, don't be surprised if this is like a secret rare or maybe like an ultra rare, because the Burial from a Different Dimension was an ultra rare when it first came out, and I just don't think Burial is going to go to 3 anytime soon, because Konami probably forgot about it. But this card is pretty much just as good. Thank you guys for watching as always.